Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be continuing our PLC tutorial series, and today we'll be looking at user-defined data types, UDTs, which are a super important concept in PLC programming. Okay, so today's tutorial is going to be a little bit different because I've been doing a lot of code along tutorials in this series, but today's video is going to need to feature a fair bit of structured text, which I haven't gone super deep into on the channel. And so I think what would be more valuable than sharing the writing of this code line by line is talk about the concept and show it in a practical use environment, and then I'll explain to you the code I generated for this. So to start very high level with the concept, a user-defined data type is essentially a grouping of tags that you want associated with a shared type of device. So a very common example is in a big chemical plant. You'd make a user-defined data type for every valve, every pump and motor. And sometimes you go even more generic and you say every two-state device is going to have auto manual mode, it'll have an interlock bit, it'll have auto manual commands, it'll have alarms, overrides, and a whole bunch more features. Every single device of this type is going to have these things. So you bunch a bunch of features together for shared objects in a data type. The example that I'm going to show with you guys today is going to be alarms. This is very common, regardless of the size of your system, to want a bunch of shared alarms in your factory. So if you're building a little standalone system, there still could be 15, 20 things that go wrong with it. And if you're controlling an entire factory from this PLC, there could be hundreds or thousands of things that could go wrong with it. And so you want to start by defining some things that every tag, every alarm might have in common. So in TIA Portal, there's a folder called PLC data types over on the left in the system tree. In Rockwell, I think there's a section called UDTs, user-defined data types, and most other PLC platforms, it'll be pretty clear. It'll be something that says data types. And when you make a new one, you go to add new data type. I've already generated the base code for alarm. And here's where I think it's really clear what's going on. You're saying, what does every alarm have? It's going to have some event that's going to trigger it initially, and then it's going to need to give me the option to acknowledge that alarm and say, yep, I've seen it. Because when you trigger an alarm, the most normal response case is that a light would turn on to say, hey, I'm in alarm state. You would shut down the logic until someone had come over and said, I see the alarm, it's okay to resume. So then there will be this bit tracking if that alarm is active, if it has not yet been acknowledged. And then when someone does try to acknowledge it, we need to retain that bit because there's a chance someone hits acknowledge, but the trigger condition is still active. In that case, we need to see that it's been acknowledged, but not yet cleared. And then just practically speaking, we'll want to keep a track of the last time, the timestamp that the alarm triggered. This is really useful if you were to tie this to an HMI or some sort of SCADA software so you can track alarms over time. And then we'll just give a couple identifying things. So ID and message could just be like enumerated 1 through 20, and message could be like, here's the thing that just happened. So you put that information again on an HMI. And we'll say every alarm in our system, we want to share these. And you can see we have Booleans, we have long date time, we have integer and string tags all grouped into this user-defined data type because we say no matter how many alarms we make, we want to keep track of all of these alarms. And then to show where this gets really useful, we make a data block. We make a global database, and we say, hey, we're going to store all the information about all of these alarms inside of this database. So I go and make an array of 20 alarms, and right off the bat, I get 20 individual objects that all have the ability to be set up here. So initially, I have one of these tied to a physical push button. I have another one tied to a PLC bit. I could come right in here and I could say, this is actually my third alarm. It doesn't matter. And then we'll say, and this ID is 2, and you can see this is the default timestamp it loads in at, so this has never been triggered, okay? But I get all of this information for 20 objects, 21 really, just by making an array from 0 to 20 of alarm. So I created that data type, and now I can make infinite numbers of that data type, and I get all of those tags populated every time. And then I made one individual outside of the array to say current alarm, because a really common thing in big systems in particular is alarm fatigue. And so many alarms go off when something shuts down that you lose sight of what has happened most recently or what the most critical one is. So I made a separate one, and for the sake of this demonstration today, this will be really valuable because we'll be able to see whatever triggered last. So you can see the last alarm that I triggered was the button trigger. The one that's tied to the button. So I'm going to drag that off to the side. We'll pull that back up later. But now we've created a bunch of these objects, right? They live in this DB alarms, but we're not doing anything with them yet. And this is where the structured text is going to come in. So buckle up. An important thing to understand is for loops are not super easy to do in ladder. You can do something kind of brute force with like counter variables and move blocks, but almost the whole reason structured text became a thing, and in Siemens it's called SCL, structured command language. It is Siemens' version of structured text. All the syntax people can calm down. The reason structured text kind of emerged as a viable PLC programming language is because loops and other sort of more advanced programming concepts are really tricky to do in ladder. I think Rockwell does have a for block, but honestly, if you can pick up a little bit of structured text, you're going to be a better PLC programmer anyways. And I'll talk you through what's happening here. And let's talk through how you would want alarms in your factory to work. Any alarm goes off in my system and I want it to activate the alarm light. The hey, you have an alarm and it hasn't been acknowledged light. So that's my light 0 right here. And then what I also want to do is I want to move whatever the last alarm that occurred is into my current alarm field. Okay, this is partly for me for this tutorial so I can keep it up over here on the right and show you how this code works. But this is also a very real world scenario where you'd want to keep track of whatever the last alarm that went off was and show that on the HMI, or you might want to do it where the first, right, the oldest unacknowledged alarm was. That might be more useful if you're doing like root cause analysis. Anyways, you can do that pretty easily in structured text. And what we're going to do here is we're going to talk through the code that I have set up in my alarm processing routine. And then if you're doing this in kind of a follow along fashion, feel free to pause and copy it. But anyways, the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to check the local time. This is useful when we're doing time comparisons later. And then we're going to reset the light to 0. So the way functions work, and this is in a function, not a function block, the way functions work is they don't have memory. So we're going to start every scan of the alarm logic as if there is no alarm active. And so we're going to turn the light off unless we find that one of the alarms is active as we iterate through on our for loop. And that's when we'll turn the light back on, as we'll see in a bit. Okay, and then latest time and latest index are just going to be they're going to be checkers for us to see if we've iterated through the whole loop and if we found alarms that have gone off more recently than the kind of initial time, right? The default time when you first set up a new tag. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. These are all just instantiating values. If you've seen any like C++ programming or Python programming, Arduino, hopefully this looks pretty familiar to you at the beginning. Now, the meat of what the alarm handler is doing for us is it's iterating from 0 to 20, right? Because we made an array of 0 to 20 alarms. So important to note, if you made a new array with 50 new alarms and you called them something different, you do need to make a new version of this, or at least update this counter with your new array size, and you need to point it at the right input tags, okay? But anyways, for 0 to 20, which is going to iterate through all of our alarms in our database of alarms, first we're going to check if the trigger is active. So if it's actively having the alarm condition trigger it, and it hasn't already been active. So if the trigger's on, but we've already seen that it's active on past cycles, doesn't make sense to do all this initial stuff again. But what we'll do then is we'll say, okay, active is true. We'll reset acknowledged, because even if for some reason it had been previously acknowledged, the alarm is still occurring. So we'll make that false. And then we'll set the timestamp that this alarm has last gone off at as temp time. So this will give us a snapshot of the time that the alarm triggered. Then we'll also say if acknowledge is true, or this is something I forgot to mention, acknowledge all. So what I have physically is 2 push buttons. One I'm going to use to trigger one of the alarms. The other one I want to use as an acknowledge all button. Okay, if you've been in an industrial environment, it's very normal for a cabinet to have like an alarm acknowledge push button on the outside. So I have an acknowledge all push button here. So if I acknowledge just that individual alarm, or I press acknowledge all, then I want acknowledged past tense to go equal to true, and then I can reset acknowledge equal to false. Again, acknowledged is that intermediate value that's checking to see if acknowledged has been true, then I should reset the thing. If trigger is not currently active and acknowledged is true, then we want to set active back equal to false. And we don't really need an and if active check here because there's no harm in setting a value that's already false equal to false again. So just keep it clear and simple. And then again, if we get any alarm that is currently active, let's have our active alarm light just be on. And then this little bit here is just for us to be able to track the most recently triggered and active alarm and move it into our global alarm. So that's this line down here. Whatever our latest time and latest alarm index is, let's go ahead and copy that whole thing into the current alarm. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll assume ACK all is equal to false, right? So it's a push button. So if we detect that it's true, we'll go ahead and reset it at the end. This we could actually delete most likely now that I'm reading it to you. But we're going to leave it as is because I know this is working. So I put all that logic in a function I called alarm handler. And then in main, I call 2 things. I call the alarm handler, and then I call another function called alarm setup. And this one I made purely for the sake of demonstrating how this works. Okay. So like I said, I have 2 push buttons in the field. One, I'm the first one tied to 0 on my PLC. I'm going to use it to simulate the trigger for alarm 0. And then I made a memory tag called trigger 1. I'll use that to simulate triggering alarm 1. And then my other push button tied to input 1, I'll use that as the acknowledge all signal. Okay. Again, I hope this is making sense in terms of why to use it. I set up alarm 0 and alarm 1 to be a button trigger and a PLC bit trigger so that when I trigger them here on the left, you'll see them populate this current alarm on the right, and you'll get a good sense of the benefit of a UDT. So if I push the start push button, you can see on the left side there that activates alarm 0. In the field, my output, my light is on now. And if I go ahead and press stop all, that'll trigger acknowledge all, the light is off. And what you can see in current alarm here in the bottom right is we got an updated timestamp and it says, hey, the button trigger was the last alarm to go off. Now, if I modify to 1, what's cool is the light just turned on in the field. So the same output triggered, that's my, hey, an alarm is active and hasn't been acknowledged yet. And here you can see PLC bit trigger is the last alarm that got triggered. And the ID is 1, and I got an updated timestamp. So again, I'll press acknowledge, but it's not going to actually clear it because the trigger condition is still true. If I modify to 0, the trigger condition goes away. Now I can clear the thing. So I'm able to generate a lot of alarms with shared logic very quickly, and they all have a trigger, an acknowledge, an active, acknowledge, timestamp. They have all these shared conditions, and I know they're going to work the same way thanks to the UDT that I generate. But I can still reference the individual tags under each of those alarms and use them to program unique functionality. So if only 1 or 2 of these alarms need to open a vent valve or stop a certain pump, I could still do that with these UDTs. Hopefully that's a useful practical tutorial for you. Apologies, this is a little bit of a chaotic tutorial, but this is honestly a pretty tricky one to teach because I didn't want to get super in the weeds on structured text with you, and the lines and the use cases between UDTs and function blocks and instance data blocks do get a little bit blurry. Some of it is just getting familiar with both, and then the use cases sort of arise as you're building systems. But essentially, speedrun, a user-defined data type, is just you grouping tags that you want every device of a certain type to have access to one master data type tag, like an alarm that needs a trigger, acknowledge, active, and timestamp. It's also totally common practice to create UDTs, data types for devices like alarms, pumps, motors, valves, analog sensors, and combine that with function blocks. So it's not either or user-defined data types or function blocks in databases, which we talked about in our last video. They can be combined, and that's how you can make some really powerful, clean, well-structured code. Okay, so I still hope this practical tutorial was useful for you. As always, if you have questions or there are things I forgot to cover in this, feel free to ask them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Let me know what you want to see next on the channel in the comments, and please don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're finding this content useful. Thanks for watching, good luck with your projects, and see you next time. Bye.